Amanda Cashin is to my right. Amanda is the Vice President of Life Science at Alexandria Real Estate Equities. Alexandria, for those of you who may not know, bills itself as the landlord of choice to the bioscience industry. Headquartered in Pasadena, California, but all over this country and all over the world. In her role at Alexandria, Amanda leads their life science team and provides scientific expertise and insight to support the development of Alexandria's clusters. And again, she'll go into this in more detail, but a bit of background. If you don't know, if you think about the biotech hotspots and where their clusters, physical and business and related clusters growing up, you're going to see an Alexandria imprint, footprint of some type. Mission Bay in San Francisco, the East River Bioscience Complex in Manhattan, a relatively new initiative in RTP, although they've been in RTP for quite some time, and on and on. That's just three that come to my mind very, very quickly. Amanda's responsibilities at Alexandria include leading their venture investment transactions, their trend analysis, and their tenant underwriting efforts. She received a PhD in chemical biology from the California Institute of Technology and graduated with a degree in physical organic chemistry from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Her scientific expertise and peer-reviewed publications are in the fields of biochemistry, organic chemistry, physical chemistry, pharmacology, electrophysiology, and neuroscience. And in keeping with my pleasure at sort of digging up an interesting factoid, this is not going to embarrass her at all, but I noticed you started a student biotech group at Caltech, which I think is fascinating and something I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, doing that in an environment like that. To my left is Steve Hall. Steve is also a longtime friend, is headquartered in Research Triangle Park, but is a partner with Lilly Ventures. Steve is currently, as I said, at Lilly Ventures with more than 25 years of drug discovery experience at both multinational pharmaceutical companies and biotech organizations. Prior to joining Lilly in 2009, he was Senior Vice President for R&D at Cerenex, which of course was later acquired by Pfizer. At Cerenex, Steve recruited and led a team developing a novel discovery technology and applied it to a project that advanced from a novel screen to first patient dosed in just over 3 years. And that's really what led Pfizer to acquire Cerenex. Prior to joining Cerenex, Steve was Site Director, Sphinx Labs, Eli Lilly, where he oversaw lead generation efforts in the areas of combinatorial chemistry, automation, high-throughput screening, biomolecular research, and information technology. And just to show you what a tightly woven web this whole bio-innovation and innovation space is, Sphinx Pharmaceuticals was the parent, or was the, I guess, origin of what is now Sphinx Labs, Eli Lilly. And Sphinx was the first biotech spin-out of Duke University. It was one of the first startups that I helped create many, many, many years ago. Steve is the author or co-author of more than 40 papers and 60 patents, and received an undergraduate degree from Central Michigan and a PhD from MIT. He sits on the boards of Cerulean Pharma, Forma Therapeutics, Hydra Biosciences, Innocentive, and Nimbus Discovery, and is a board observer at Viamet, a UNC Chapel Hill spinout. Interesting factoid about Steve, he probably hates being introduced this way, but you need to know that he also produces fascinating children. He has a daughter who is an incredible opera star and another daughter who's a world-class rowing athlete. So it's very fascinating to me that people could produce two such outstanding and highly accomplished progeny. So congratulations on that. Let me say a few words from my perspective of why I think this is such an important topic, and then ask each of our panelists to sort of give you their perspective, their overview on the realm of corporate venture capital, a sense of how what they're doing in this space, what their models look like, and then we're going to have a Q&A, once again inviting you to feel free to come to the mics and interrupt us at any time with your questions. Corporate venture capital's rise to prominence in the biotech sphere from the Mark Crowell perspective is really more important than ever, given many of the trends that we're seeing in the venture capital marketplace with respect to interest and willingness to invest in early stage biotechnology companies. As institutional investors have moved further downstream or raised their investment bar higher for reasons that are very understandable, corporate venture capital contacts have brought smart investors into our realm, into our deals, providing access not just to their deep pockets, but to abundant pipelines of advice and guidance from their R&D organizations, and opened the door to market validation in terms of downstream pharma interest. We in the university technology and innovation community think this benefit and interest works in both directions, by the way, and that by working with first-rate university business development programs and R&D organizations, we believe that corporate venture capital obtains enhanced visibility into emerging biotechnology research pipelines and enhanced access to innovation. I personally believe that if the biopharma sector wants a vibrant environment for building an innovative pool of technologies that could become a part of pharma's future pipeline, corporate venture capital is an absolute necessity. The issue for corporate VC funds, of course, is whether the effort should focus on ROI, on gaining access to a pipeline, or generically on enhancing the development of a robust ecosystem of high-quality innovation assets which create the proverbial rising tide that raises all boats. So with this panel, we bring to you two individuals who are operating at the leading edge of corporate venture capital, who I've asked to brief you, again, on their current activities in this sphere, what they're doing and what they're seeing, and how they would respond to some of my opening comments. I will then have some additional questions that I will start the conversation with and ask you to join us at any time. So Amanda, if you would start, please.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So just to briefly provide an overview of Alexandria, Mark explained that we're a commercial real estate company that provides laboratory space to drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, universities, and users of laboratory space. I work closely with our Alexandria Venture Investments arm, where we make direct investments in leading life science companies, therapeutics companies, diagnostics companies, and tools companies that are really at the disruptive edge of innovation. So we make direct equity investments in these companies. We've been doing so since 1996, and we are also a limited partner number of top-tier venture funds, including Vantage Point, who was an earlier panelist. Yeah, Stefan. And we also have co-invested with really top-tier folks, including Lilly, with Forma and Cerulean. We have a small stake in those companies. But really, the reason why we have a corporate venture arm at Alexandria is really to not only make a return on our investment, because we do believe that we make good investment decisions, so we're looking for return on our capital, but also it's strategic by nature in that we're looking to develop relationships with cutting-edge scientists, prominent academic founders who are continual, perpetual innovators of companies and technologies, as well as develop relationships with the life science community. So we can really keep a pulse on the cutting edge as a real estate company. We want to know where our client tenants are moving towards. We try to keep ahead of the innovation curve in that respect. So we really are actively investing in this area. One of the things that we talked about in preparation for the panel was that I could provide a little bit of overview, since Alexandria spends a lot of time trying to be at the forefront of the life science industry trends, a little bit of overview of the pharmaceutical industry and perhaps a little bit insight into why the pharma companies are increasing their activities in investing in disruptive technologies like Lilly and others are doing. And if you look sort of what the pharmaceuticals industry, the state it's in and sort of the history of this sort of 100-year-old sector, they are facing a number of headwinds, a number of pressures, including lack of R&D productivity or decreased R&D productivity. They have certainly a lot of competition from generic drugs, and also they have patent cliffs that are expiring, and I think the number is about 130 billion that are expiring in patents by 2013. So they're really needing to change the way they innovate. They need to access innovation earlier. They need to really have a big window into opportunities, and their old model of not being invented here syndrome, Merck had, and others had this model where if it wasn't invented inside the confines, the walls of the Merck campus, then it wasn't good. So the not invented here syndrome is something that pharma is trying to shed and really decentralize and break down those barriers of those isolated silo campuses to access innovation more externally. So they really are looking at a number of ways of increasing external research, but I think the corporate venture arm is a really strategic way that the pharmaceutical companies can access innovation through direct investments, through sitting on boards of these disruptive companies, so to really kind of keep a pulse and help guide some of these companies along the way as well. So again, pharma is facing these pressures. Their eyes are wide open. They are really proactively trying to become and adopt a more open innovation model. You'll hear folks like Chris Viehbacher from Sanofi say that 50% of their research will be done in-house, 50% will be done outside of Sanofi. So that's a huge transformation. I think now it's 70-30, 70 in-house, 30% outside of Sanofi's walls. But a number of pharma companies are really focused on this open innovation model so they can really increase productivity, and change sort of the way they've been developing drugs. And collaboration is a big part of that too. This goes beyond sort of corporate venture, but pharma companies are actively collaborating with academia. 2011 was, I think, a pretty landmark year for academic collaborations with industry. You see groups like the Pfizer Centers for Therapeutic Innovation, where they are trying to work shoulder to shoulder next to academic postdocs and principal investigators using Pfizer's technologies and their antibody tools and the disease biology understanding from academic institutions to really try to accelerate translational research and sort of not have to wait too long. And the old model, even with pharma and academia collaboration, used to be an academic may have a fantastic idea. They'd sort of throw it over the wall to pharma and hope that pharma continued working on it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. They really didn't have sort of that continual dialogue back and forth, which is now what they're striving to achieve. Again, all in efforts to access and open innovation and really kind of think differently about the way pharma is working and trying to innovate. And, a conversation just came up earlier about R&D spending, and I think R&D spending, by definition, at least I hope that still remains to be true, pharma is a key investor in their R&D pipeline. So they continue to do that, but I think the pharma venture model really does enable them to kind of have this window. They're sitting on boards, they're leading deals. I was looking at statistics earlier where about 35% of new financings in 2011 included participation from corporate venture arms. And they're not just sort of this passive investor that they may have once been perceived to be around the table of a venture syndicate. They are leading deals. They are providing really strategic and smart capital and leveraging, as Mark said, to the resources of the internal, either the Pfizer internal team or the Lilly internal research team to kind of help the companies that they invest in grow. And pharma, from a company and a venture perspective, is a very strategic investor to have around the table because they are the oftentimes most obvious exit opportunity for a drug company that is developing a drug that perhaps maybe a Lilly or a Novartis would one day want to acquire, so then bringing back returns to the rest of the investors around the table. So I think there's a number of strategic reasons why pharma is investing, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that on the panel today. But that's just a little bit of an overview of sort of what we think, what we see. And Alexandria, through our venture investments arm, I mentioned we've been investing since '96. We were founded in '94. So it really is a strategic thing that we are looking to do. And we really are a joiner of rounds. We don't lead rounds like a Lilly may or like a Vantage Point may when they're looking at deals, but we really are sort of an active participant in investing in really disruptive technologies.
Thank you. Steve.
Well, first, let me start off by just, I guess I feel obligated to respond to a comment that David Kinney made. I'm trying to see where he is out there, as one of those nasty VC guys, relative to scientists. So I've actually been doing venture capital for just 3 years. Prior to that, I was in operational and drug discovery for more than 25 years. Both at small companies and large companies. So as you hear my comments, I think maybe that'll help you put my comments into perspective, because I come at it not only from the venture side, but I've spent week after week after week doing 3 VC presentations a day begging for money. So I know what that's like. And then I've been on the pharma side where the startup companies come in and your usual response is, well, why don't you go do these next 3 experiments and come back and talk to us? So somehow you never seem to have enough data. But moving to the subject of corporate venture capital, I think it's extremely important to keep in mind that there are really a whole spectrum of flavors of corporate venture capital groups. So some are really just a slight offshoot of the company's business development function. And so often those groups are, actively looking for some way to combine equity financing with some type of collaboration deal. On the other side of the spectrum, which is where Lilly Ventures is, are venture groups that are really completely separate from the business development function within the parent company. So just to drive that point home, Lilly Ventures actually is a separate company, separate legal entity. I'm not a Lilly employee. However, we get 100% of our capital from Lilly. So obviously they're a very important limited partner to us. And so we're, of course, interested in what they have to say. But I think that's really critical because if you're an entrepreneur thinking about taking venture capital, you really need to understand, what's the personality of this particular corporate venture group and how might that affect your ability to do deals down the road with other pharma groups or collaborations. And I'll just I guess try to push that point a little bit more. So even once we invest in a company, we are not a conduit for a business development deal with Lilly. What we would do, and this is how we've operated, is if we think a project has matured to the point where we think scientists within Lilly should look at it, we'll simply provide the name, phone number, email address of the person within Lilly to the CEO saying, I think you should call this person and tell them about your project. Once we've done that, that's the end of our involvement. If a deal happens, great. If it doesn't, that's simply not our role. So let me tell you just a little bit about Lilly Ventures itself, again, to kind of put my comments into perspective. So we're a $200 million fund. We're just celebrating a 10th anniversary this year. We are active investors. We like to lead investments. It's not an absolute requirement, but for the vast majority of our investments, we like to take board seats. And I think in fairness, you'd have to ask our portfolio companies this question, but we like to think anyways that we bring more to the table than just a check. As Amanda mentioned, if our portfolio company is having a particular problem where they don't have the internal expertise, that's something where we can say, hey, I know a person in formulation that might be able to help you, and we simply connect them, and in essence, the portfolio company gets some free consulting. As we think about investments, we are very much biased towards platform technologies because as you think about any one individual project, the probability that project would be at the right stage, at the right time for our limited partner, Eli Lilly and Company, to be interested in it is pretty small. They might be interested in the area, but maybe they don't have an open development slot. And so as we think about companies that have technologies that have broad applicability, that's something where it's not project by project dependent, and if it's a technology that has an opportunity to change the way Lilly would actually work, that could have an incredible impact down the road. So I also want to clear up, I think, one fairly common misconception, and it's certainly true for Lilly Ventures, I think it's true for most of the other corporate venture groups as well, is having an investment from Lilly Ventures actually does not give you an inside track towards ultimately being acquired by Lilly. So over 10 years of investing, Lilly has acquired just one company in the Lilly Ventures portfolio, and basically all the other pharma have been fairly active and have acquired companies that we've invested in. So it isn't, again, since we're independent, an investment by us is not a route to a business development deal, and it's not a route to acquisition. As we look at investments, we are certainly looking to find those companies that really have everything put in place. We look at about 400 opportunities a year, and we typically will make 3 to 4 new investments per year. So given that ratio, we can be very picky about who we talk to and who we invest in. And following up on this theme of that actually David did mention, once you provide the money, kind of have faith in the team and stay out of the way and help them be successful. And that's actually what we're interested in doing. And so to accomplish that, we really need to have an extremely talented management team, because if you have the right team in place, if the science goes south, they'll recognize it early and hopefully will come up with a strategy that allows the company to recover.
See, Jim Powers has a question. Jim.
Yes, thanks, Mark. So is pharma venture capital strictly interested in financial return, as would be a traditional venture capital company or firm? And is pharma venture capital interested only in products? Particularly as we read, in clinical stage, versus interested in perhaps underlying science or platform technologies?
I think each corporate group is a little bit different. Speaking for Lilly Ventures, if I look at the investments that we've made since I've joined in 2009, all but one of those companies was at a preclinical stage. And in fact, they were all at least a year from the clinic. So we actually prefer to get in early. We think that's where we can leverage not only our own expertise, but that of the other science within Lilly to help the company be successful. I think from a financial versus strategic benefit, there's two answers to that. It's fair to say that the financial folks within Lilly certainly expect us to provide returns, commensurate with our peer group. But the real reason why Lilly Ventures exists is to provide a supplemental window on innovation. It's for that really more soft, strategic benefit of looking at innovation outside the four walls of Eli Lilly and Company. Because the reality is, if you look at Lilly's sales, we're a $200 million fund. We can't do well enough to make that big a difference on Lilly's bottom line. So financially, it's important to us, because certainly we want people to look at us thinking that we can pick the right investments. But for Lilly, it's getting introductions to those technologies, just having a familiarity of who's out there working in what areas, so that as Lilly's own priorities change, they have an opportunity to have access to those technologies.
Yeah, I would just add, I think it depends on, obviously, the pharma companies. Some are very focused on financial returns. I think Roche is more along those lines. But certainly SR1, Glaxo's arm is very much technology driven. You talk to Rajiv Dadu, who's sort of always in an airport somewhere, seeking out deals. He's knocking on universities' doors. He's talking to other VCs, and GSK's SR1 are really focused on technology platform, really early stage, really hungry, trying to figure out sort of what the next generation of technologies are. Even if you move beyond pharma, like if you look at, say, Syngenta Ventures, we recently talked to Carol, who runs their venture arm, and Syngenta's an ag tech company, a seeds company, but they're looking at enabling technologies. It's pretty interesting. They're looking at life science, maybe that it's actually a drug company, but there's applications that could be then transferred to the seeds and ag tech space. But very strategic. They're obviously looking for returns, but they're trying to enhance Syngenta's seed technology capabilities with enabling technologies. Or if you look at GE, their Healthy Imagination Fund, similar thing. I think the GE is a newer initiative for GE, but they're really trying to access innovation and kind of stay at the cutting edge for some enabling technology type companies. They've recently invested in a nanotech type company in Seattle as one of their earlier investments. Looking for return, but there's a strategic component. But I don't think every corporate venture group has to have that strategic component where there will be intersection with what's going on in their internal pipeline.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yeah.
Great. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued with some of what I've just heard in terms of what I call some of the secondary non-ROI related benefits of corporate VC investing. Do you know, in the case of Lilly, or do you know more broadly, do funds like these have, do you have metrics, or evaluation criteria that reflect value in these softer areas, access to pipeline, early stage ideas? If you do well there, but the ROI is down, do you still have a good year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so we do track and keep track of all of those softer strategic elements. So one of the things we can look at is once we make an investment, at any point in time, does Lilly actually do a collaboration? Or did they at least discuss doing a collaboration such that, that's evidence that we invested in a company that clearly was working in an area that Lilly thought was useful. We look at all the touch points between our portfolio company scientists and leadership and scientists within Lilly. Because one of the benefits, one of the kind of the standard aspects of our diligence process is we will usually include one or two scientists, clinicians, whatever is most relevant type of individual to participate in that diligence with us. And so one of the things that we're enabling for the larger organization is, again, getting that thinking outside the four walls of the company and seeing what other folks are doing in terms of medical innovation.
Any additional insight there?
Yeah, I was just thinking, even looking at a Pfizer and trying to figure out maybe within each different corporate venture group where they report into. So do they report into the head of business development, or do they report into the head of research, or do they report to the CFO? I think that kind of can figure out sort of how a different corporate group could, how it falls into the overall strategy, if it's just an ROI, or is it for business development opportunities, or is it for insights for their own internal pipeline. I think Pfizer falls into the example of reporting to the business development type groups, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think there, Pfizer is, much more focused on sort of maybe a little bit later, definitely sort of the clinical stage type investments, because they're trying to have a window into pipeline opportunities. But yeah, I think it depends on, obviously all those factors that they're looking at.
Oh, yes.
I was just wondering, with the broader capital crunch that affected the VC market, because this is even some VCs really putting out to try to raise enough fund. It looks like with the corporate
Well, actually, a number of our deals, for whatever reason, one or more of the co-investors may be another corporate venture capital group, and I think the record is a company for us is a company called Aileron up in Boston, and there's 4 corporate venture capital groups in that, and yeah, I think the group. It really boils down to what's the objective of each individual corporate venture capital group, but there are some that we have a number of investments with, and they have a very similar investment philosophy to ours. And I think they recognize that in the end, whenever there is going to be an exit potential for any startup company, I mean, no one can predict who the successful suitor is going to be. And so I think even for us, I mean, we do feel that even though we're in this to have attractive financial returns and also provide a strategic benefit, direct benefit to Lilly, we also understand that part of this is simply providing funds for early stage research to support the ecosystem. Because if that's not done, 10, 20 years from now, there's not going to be enough small companies producing enough innovation for pharma to survive.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to you were talking about, I think you were talking about syndication risk and sort of the environment being really difficult out there, and how does corporate venture play into that? And I think, it's really a beneficial thing to startup companies and to the industry as a whole that pharma is hungry for innovation, so they're really putting their dollars to work from a venture perspective. I think that's definitely supplementing the decrease we're seeing from the venture capital community who are maybe more risk adverse or they're at the end of their fund. So I think that's certainly a benefit to the life science industry specifically. Another interesting piece that's becoming more relevant in terms of filling the gap where VCs might be sort of being a little bit more cautious is the philanthropy. Venture philanthropy is a new piece that I think is becoming really interesting. For example, the Michael J. Fox Foundation is really actively putting venture capital dollars to work in investing in early stage companies through their Michael J. Fox Foundation. So they're led by their CEOs as scientists, and they really are sort of very science driven focused and in making venture investments alongside other VCs or maybe at a seed stage where they're trying to supplement some of that gap. But I think even still, 2011 was a pretty good year for venture capital. If you sort of look at the historical, it was about $7.5 billion for life science, according to NVCA. So it's not dismal, but we are facing a time when the VC community is really struggling. You're seeing funds like Prospect Ventures, not raise another fund. You're seeing funds who have had a history of managing capital, having to shut down because either the environment's tough, their LPs' appetite has changed. Certainly, it's an evolving model, and we're really kind of, I think, even in the next year or so, we're going to see even more clear on the VC side, the haves and the have-nots. Which funds are able to raise capital and continue to invest, and which ones aren't. I think if you look at, from an LP perspective, when we're looking at limited partnership decisions and why we would invest in one fund versus another, you're really looking at track record for returning capital to the limited partner. So you're looking at timelines, you're looking at multiples, and you're kind of looking at team strategy and are they able to deliver on that? Because in the life science, and I know in a number of sectors, it's been really tough because these limited partners have time constraints. They have this 10 years, they need their money back, but really it's more like 7, they'd love their money back. So that's, I think, goes to a lot of funds' ability to raise a new fund is the ability to attract returns for their investors. And another interesting piece along the lines of corporate venture, we're seeing pharma companies also become limited partners in a number of venture funds, which is, I think, a great way for, again, pharma to have an insight into a pipeline of opportunities that either business development or even just sort of purely science advancement. So you're seeing a new fund that's in formation as a VenBio first-time fund, actually. So there's not many first-time funds, but their team is a newly assembled team but has venture experience. And they're a global strategic fund. So all of their limited partners are pharma groups or some sort of strategic group. And they're playing nicely in the sandbox together as, potential competitors. And in that particular situation, I think it's interesting because they're really, they don't have strings in terms of rights for options for potentially acquiring companies or collaborations and things like that, which sometimes pharma groups want when they're an LP or an investor in something. But it's more strategic in nature, and they're really kind of along for the ride and can provide resources to the fund managers. But that's just an example of where pharma is becoming a limited partner in funds as well.
I actually wanted to come back to something and take off my Lilly Ventures hat and put on my former CSO hat, because back in, this would be 2006 or 7, there wasn't that much corporate venture capital activity at that time. And when I was at Ceranex, Lilly Ventures and Takeda Research Investments both invested in Ceranex. And I remember having numerous management discussions of, do we really want money from these pharma VC groups? Is it going to hinder our ability to do deals down the road? And I think at that point in time, there was probably a general sentiment that was a real issue, because the corporate venture groups were new. They didn't have a track record. I think since that time, what we've seen is that hasn't been a negative at all. In fact, if anything, it's been more of a positive. Specifically, if they're technology platform companies, the assumption, if a pharma company's venture arm's willing to invest in it, they surely should have enough scientific expertise to, have a good sense of, is this real? Has a reasonable chance of success. So I think it's actually swung from 5 years ago being a slight negative to actually being a positive.
We had a question here as well, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, excuse me. The question about why is it that the pharma companies take such a laissez-faire attitude towards their own venture arms? I mean, why wouldn't they leverage the opportunity to take advantage of this R&D? I mean, you say, gee, if you think the technology gets to some place that it's interesting, you give them somebody's phone number. A lot of the pharma companies that I've talked to say, we realize we can't do the R&D internally anymore. We need to find a way to partner with VCs and angels who are getting there, but they can't figure out how to do that either. I mean, from your perspective, working in this, isn't this a gigantic lost opportunity that pharma is once again sort of dabbling in VC but missing the whole point once over?
Yeah, I should probably add and clarify to my comments. So we're actually being active salespeople for our portfolio companies, but we're just as active at other pharma companies as we are with Lilly. And a lot of that has to do with our fiduciary responsibilities as a director. When we're sitting on the board and we are functioning in the role of a director of that company, we cannot function partially for a subset of the investors. Our responsibility is to all the investors. So we've certainly have had conversations with our scientific counterparts within Lilly. We really think this is something interesting. You should talk to these folks. Sometimes they call, and those are the ones that end up in collaborations, and sometimes they don't. And I think, and some of that, in fairness to the internal Lilly scientific community, is there may not be a fit at that particular point in time. A lot of times this may be, if these are projects that are now close to being IND ready, then the question is, well, that particular portion of the company, what's their development pipeline look like? Is it thin in that particular region? Then they're going to be very receptive. If actually, gee, we had more compounds that passed through phase 1 cleanly than we expected, and so now we actually have more things going into phase 2 than we can even fund. So if we bring them this great phase 2 ready opportunity, that group's going to be, well, we're going to have to out-license some of our own stuff because we have too much at that stage. So it really ends up being, the stage at which the programs are, at what point they get introduced, and then, kind of what does the whole pipeline within the company look like.
But I don't think pharma's really being laissez-faire. I think they recognize they're hungry, they need pipeline, so they're trying to do a number of different things, like you said, to sort of really access innovation that's not happening within their own walls. I think they recognize that. I think every unit's organized perhaps differently, but I think they're all sort of, looking for innovation in any shape or form. There's a couple of recent case studies that are worth mentioning because it's not exactly pharma venture, but in a lot of sense it is. So Sanofi just helped finance a company, $125 million to this company, Warp Therapeutics in Boston. It's alongside Third Rock Ventures, which is sort of this big guns venture capital group in Boston and now in San Francisco. And $125 million deal that Sanofi's putting in, they get equity and they get an option to buy the company at the end. So that's very active. They're saying, hey, listen, we want to taste. If we like what we see, if you meet these milestones, we're going to buy you. And that's to fill their pipeline. So I think that's an example. There's another example where Celgene and Versant Ventures, so again, teaming up with the traditional venture groups, formed this company, Quanticell, along with a professor at Stanford, Steve Quake, who they put in $45 million to finance a company for 3 years. Celgene did, and it's in one of our buildings in San Francisco, so I'm pretty familiar with it, where they're even sort of occupying space right next door to Celgene, so they can really be collaborating right next door, and then Versant's just down the street. So they're thinking differently. They're trying different models, if it's an option deal, or if it's a collaboration, or if it's a straight venture investment. I think they're really trying to be active, and that is different. And I think too, coming to the point about, well, what if it's competitive to what they have in their own internal pipeline? Whether it's an M&A activity or whether it's a venture deal, probably less so venture, but a lot of times we're seeing pharma making tough choices. So say they acquire a technology that's in oncology, but they have a competing internal program, but they like this newly acquired one better. They're making those tough decisions to shut down those internal efforts.
You're at the 10 years. Have they announced they're re-upping the fund?
We're just working through that now, but the expectation is, yes, we'll continue to be investing.
Got a question up at the top of the room?
Yeah, good question. We actually have those individual scientists assign an individual CDA with Lilly Ventures, but we also vet all those individuals with the portfolio company before we bring them. And vice versa. I mean, in some cases, the company was close enough to working in an area that was already being worked on within Lilly that we didn't ask the best expert. We asked some people that we knew were knowledgeable just to make sure there wasn't any chance for cross-contamination. But I think the thing to underscore there is the thing we want to make sure is the potential portfolio company is comfortable. If they're not, then we don't bring them. And that's certainly true in the chemistry area. We will not ever use an internal Lilly person on the chemistry side of things. Always a third party, or actually myself.
Okay, I'm watching the clock, so if you are thinking you have a question, be making your way to the microphone while we await to see if that occurs. I have at least two more that I wanted to make sure I've tried to sneak in here. One is I've visited and I'm somewhat enamored with the Alexandria backed Accelerator Corporation in Seattle as a model for getting early stage just emerging biopharma assets into companies with high growth potential. I'm wondering if there are corporate venture funds that are associated with that effort, and if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah, thanks. That was on my list to cover, so.
Oh, good.
So Alexandria is a investor in the Accelerator Corporation, which is a venture-backed sort of supercharged incubator that's located in Seattle, right next to Fred Hutch and the University of Washington. And it's a single management team that scouts and then manages portfolio companies that they create along with the scientific founders. Usually the technology comes from universities, very early stage, very technology platform driven, sort of big science ideas. And it has a dedicated syndicate of investors. So everybody around the table has committed to investing in a Series A of the companies that are brought into the accelerator. So the syndicate of investors at Accelerator includes Amgen, so strategic, PPD, which is a contract research organization, so strategic, as well as WRF Capital, OVP, and Arch Ventures. So that's the syndicate, but it is interesting that you see these pharma companies really interested in sort of, one, investing in a team, and two, investing in the early stage efforts. So absolutely, I think it's a pretty interesting model. It's a difficult one. I think it's hard to replicate perhaps in other locations, or you sort of hear the buzzword accelerator, but with a dedicated team and a dedicated syndicate, it's unique.
Yeah, interesting. Then another question I have for either or both of you is, have you, in your travels and sourcing deals and working in all sorts of cluster areas where good things are happening, have you seen any interesting university models evolving for partnering with corporate VC to try to, again, create increased capacity for launching early stage companies?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think we actually spent a lot of time thinking about kind of alternative accelerator type models, because one of the things that we've seen occasionally is as the universities become more proactive in trying to get new companies started, I think sometimes the technology really isn't ready yet.
Yep.
And the company is formed prematurely, and what we really need is a place for that technology, that science to go to mature and to have input from people experienced more on the business side of things. And that's I actually haven't seen a good solution to that problem. One thing that we're actually trying to get going down in the RTP area is in essence a investor club, and this is we're partnered up with the University of North Carolina, where their tech transfer office is kind of pre-screening and some opportunities, and when they think they're ready, they come to this group of I think 5 VCs, and the objective for that is a yes/no for some startup capital, small amounts, $250,000, this kind of thing, to run those experiments that really are key to knowing, do you really have something here or not?
Yep.
But we definitely need more options there.
Yep.
Another good model is QB3 at UCSF, and so it's a consortium with UCSF, Berkeley, and UC Santa Clara, run by Reg Kelly. And QB3 is a model that people are trying to emulate, sort of a UC system effort where they really are trying to translate research. They have the QB3 Garage, which is sort of a mini incubator where a PI or a postdoc or a grad student can come and kind of tinker around and create a company. It also has a group that's dedicated to investing in opportunities called Mission Bay Capital. Their main office is located in Mission Bay, San Francisco. So this Mission Bay Capital is the limited partners are actually individuals, very savvy individuals, like like a Brooke Byers from Kleiner Perkins or Christoph Christofferson from More David Dow. These groups who are really, not More David Dow, Morgan, anyhow. But Mission Bay Capital is a way to try to fund some of the companies that are coming out of QB3, but they've done a really great job. And from the corporate side, they have collaborations at QB3 with industry, like they have a good collaboration with GE and Philips, but that's more sort of just on research, not necessarily commercialization.
Okay, I think we have time for a quick question and quick answer.
It's quick. One of the things that's been, one of the changes going on in big pharma is the shrinking of internal R&D and the outsourcing of more and more of R&D to CROs, particularly global CROs. From your vantage point, have you seen a decrease in the sort of global number of R&D projects in big pharma, or has this led to an increase?
I could take
sorry.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about, I mean, certainly it's led to a decrease internally within in large pharma, but given the large number of opportunities that we're still being presented with for funding, I mean, there's a tremendous, I mean, if there was capital to fund all those projects, there's not enough pharma companies around to consume all of those. So there's still, from my perspective, starting material out there that is high quality, that can be funded, that ultimately should find its way into pharma. But was that your question? No, I missed it. So
the question wasn't coming from biotech. The question is, within big pharma itself, are they doing fewer and fewer R&D projects because they've shrunk their internal R&D and they're outsourcing it to CROs?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they absolutely are. I mean, I think if you look at the R&D budgets even are facing pressures. Same thing we're talking about Wall Street, Can they justify a 10% success rate for the pharma pipeline? So pharma companies like Pfizer are really getting pressures from their shareholders to say, you got to cut back. You don't have as many revenues because you have these patent cliffs, Lipitor's coming off patent, so cut back your R&D. So I think that's really scary. So even if they cut back internal, external, it's sort of still an R&D adjustment that they're making. So hopefully that won't be too extreme, because I think it's now more than ever, as you were saying, the time to invest. I mean, you look at oncology, we're at this era of personalized medicine. We look at this wave of genomic information that's going to come from sequencing of genomes. I think we're at this era of so much science and huge medical need. We have an aging population, all these baby boomers. Now's the time to be absolutely investing in research and development, both from industry and government. The life science industry is a key to reducing overall healthcare costs that we're all struggling with, and we see Washington talk about, and Anish was talking about, need to modernize the regulatory process. Yeah, these are things that we all think about. But now it's a great opportunity